And that's why I call her AR-15. Christmas, I give you
the very next day, you boom, boom, boom. So let's deal with the reality, Angela. There is a division in the party. You know, it's interesting. We got Joe Manchin on the show tonight. He makes an interesting point. You know, I'm like, hey, you got to figure out who you are. You know, these progressive voices seem to be dominating the dialogue for you guys. And he goes, what are you talking about? We won 40 seats. 7 of them were what you would call progressive, farther left people. 33 were centrist. What are you talking about, Cuomo? Where do you see the state of the party, Angela, in terms of what voices are being heard loudest?
Well, I certainly think that when you're talking about the senator, he's more likely to agree with Scott here on these points than he is to agree with me. We know that this is someone who also supported, it's fair, Scott. You know, he's also someone who regularly supports Donald Trump, including his last Supreme Court justice nominee. So let's be very clear that Joe Manchin is no standard bearer for the Democratic Party, especially probably not on climate change, given the area he represents, right? So let's be clear that this is not something that he's going to find to be favorable. The other thing that I do want to emphasize is the difference between a resolution and another, right? I think it's really, really important for us to talk about this. What I think Democrats were hoping to do is to lay out a plan to say, listen, climate change is real. No matter what the president tweets, even if there's snow, climate change is still real. Even if EPA, the new EPA scientists say that climate change is a hoax, climate change is still real, and I think they're trying to really be clear and be standard bearers for that. If it was so controversial, why are there so many Democratic presidential nominees who are getting behind the idea of this? Is there work to be done? Absolutely. And let's be super clear, Democrats aren't known for having amazing messaging strategies. What Democrats are known for is being right on policy and doing right by people. Policy rollouts, not so much.
All right. Certainly website rollouts, not so much. We all remember that stuff during the Obama administration. Scott, why do you guys see advantage in this?
Well, the Republicans see advantage because, you know, to call this policy half-baked would be, I'm not even sure the Democrats turned the oven on yet. I mean, this thing got rolled out, it was botched. The policy implications for the energy sector, for the manufacturing sector, for the agriculture sector. You talk about the thousands of jobs that would be impacted in the Midwest, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Texas, North Dakota, where Joe Manchin is in West Virginia, and my home state of Kentucky. This would dramatically, fundamentally alter the U.S. economy and would put a lot of people out of work. And I'm not sure the American people are going to be ready for such a fundamental change in the way our economy works, for central planning of the way we build buildings in this country. There was discussion of the idea that we don't need air travel anymore, and this idea that we're going to replace it with high-speed trains that they can't even afford to build in California. So if you look at the political implications of this in the key critical states that are going to be important in 2020, it is easy to see why Republicans see advantage in this.
Angela, what's your response?
Yeah, well, first I hope that we can start dealing with facts as we talk about the resolution and what I hope to become a bill. Scott, you know as well as me, there used to be a time on Capitol Hill where you could introduce legislation, which, by the way, again, has not yet happened, but you could introduce legislation, and that legislation goes through the traditional committee process. There's a committee markup where members of Congress are allowed to introduce amendments. So even when you talk about carbon emissions here, they say they want to have zero emissions at a 10-year mark. There are scientists that say that that's not reasonable and not realistic. So they're saying maybe 2035, maybe 2050. There is a negotiations process that normally happens in a markup with amendments, and then if you didn't get you weren't properly heard in the committee process, or maybe you don't sit on a committee of jurisdiction, there's always the floor. And for whatever reason, Republicans, and I guess Joe Manchin too, are so afraid of this idea coming to the floor that they want to bash it before it even starts. And I think the reality of it is, if we can all acknowledge climate change is real, and some of the things that we're doing, even with jobs that currently exist, are not helping us, will cause harm for future generations. What is the idea? What are the things that we can put forth to ensure that we're not just creating jobs in new sectors, that we're not just preparing future American workers for what was, right, the very regulations that Donald Trump rolled back that were Obama-era policies to reduce carbon emissions and to reduce our reliance on coal. We have to change some of these things if we want to live.
All right, so we have to see what the policies are that match the resolutions, and we'll take it from there. Let me ask you guys this while I have you both. So this Manafort decision matters to me because you now have a matter of fact that you have to deal with politically, if not legally. And I think that that's the more likely course. Scott, why do people around this president, and including the president, keep lying about Russia-related contacts and matters if they have nothing to hide?
Yeah, Paul Manafort has made a series of bad decisions, and it started a long time ago, and it has
Flynn,
continued right up
Cohen,
until
Stone.
tonight.
They all lie about the same thing. The president. Why?
Yeah, this is common. This is common in investigations. You get people that are whatever their motivations are, they think they can outsmart these prosecutors and tell lies and try to cover it up and create diversions and distractions, and it always catches up with you. So my advice from the beginning of this to everybody who was ever going to be ensnared was, all you have to do is tell the truth, and there's a high likelihood it will turn out better than if you don't. And we're seeing that manifest itself tonight for Paul Manafort. He's going to go to jail, it looks like, for a very, very long time. So I heard the Senate Intelligence Committee say they've not uncovered any evidence of collusion between Trump and Russia, but Lord have mercy,
Since when has that been the bar?
Around the president
Since when has that been the bar? We started, Angela, with the president telling the American people in the eye, nobody around me had any contact with anybody. Then he said, I've had nothing to do with Russia. I got no business. I got nothing going on. Then they said, none of my people did anything that's any collusion. There's no collusion. Now, what Scott just said is accurate. That's the new line. There is no proof that the President of the United States committed a crime with Russia with regard to interference. Since when was that the bar of what we were looking for, Angela?
Since when does anything that he does ever been the bar? Like, I think about Victor Blackwell on the weekends where he has the gumballs in the jars of how many lies Donald Trump has told. There's a shelf now. Like, this guy's not honest. There's no honest brokers around him. Roger Stone, Paul Manafort. It's just, Chris, I don't know. I don't know the answer to this.
When you get Angela Rye speechless on a proposition, Jennings, now that's a high bar.
Well, I disagree with the statement, though. I actually think the mandate of the special counsel and what the American people expect to know is whether the Trump campaign colluded, and beyond that, how deeply did the Russians try to interfere in our election, whether there was collusion or not. To me, that's what the average person wants to know. That's what we're looking for Mueller and the various committees in Congress to find.
That's all true.
So you said, when was that the bar? Well, I think that is actually
when was
the bar for most
that
Americans.
It's only about the president and committing a crime with Russia. It's what you're saying now has always been the bar. Who
No, he also used to say, since when did collusion become a crime?
That's
Remember
right.
that? There's like...
Right. And collusion is a behavior. What Manafort did with Kalimnik is collusion. What Roger Stone was attempting to do is collusion. It's not a crime. I'm not saying it's a crime. It's never been my bar for satisfaction in this. A felony and anything less is fine is not our standard of accountability. Who knew what? Why did they meet? What were they thinking? How did they do this so well, the Russians? Those are the questions. We need the answers. Crimes are not.
And why are they lying?
Right. That's where we started. That's where we'll finish. Angela Rye, Scott Jennings, thanks to both of you. Well argued.
Christmas.